This is going to be interesting. How did you guys end up in the Saginaw in the first place then?
So we've lived in Saginaw our whole lives. My
Wow. So
parents were
you're
born
born in
here.
Saginaw. Mm-hmm.
Yep. We both my parents were born in Saginaw Township. Um,
Wow. This is
yep.
this is what I've been looking for.
My
I've always been looking for like natives, and it's really actually hard to
yep.
find.
Right. Yeah, a lot of us are transplanted, right?
Yeah.
My father grew up in a neighborhood called the Sandhill. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
It's
Yep, I
actually
am.
one of the oldest neighborhoods in Saginaw Township.
Wow.
And my mother comes from the neighboring neighborhood that we refer to lovingly as the Pope Streets. Um, Joseph, Andrew, Timothy. Those
Be
are,
closer. Yes. Mm-hmm.
yes. So
Mm-hmm.
where we lived, when we lived in Oak Ridge Forest, behind there is that
Yep.
neighborhood, behind
Exactly.
Camelot, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Um, so both my parents grew up, born and raised in Saginaw Township. However, when they got married and my mother was pregnant for me, they moved to the city of Saginaw. So I was
Mm-hmm.
born in the
Mm-hmm.
city of Saginaw and
Mm-hmm.
I was raised there until I was 12.
Wow. So that means Trisha started out there too.
Yes, so Trisha also started in the city. So I
Wow.
was in seventh grade and she would have been what grade would she have been in? Fifth,
Hmm.
maybe fourth, I think.
Probably fourth because that's actually when I met
Fourth.
her. Right. So
Yes.
I met you
Okay.
guys when you had just moved then, that means. Wow. Because I had
Yes.
moved third grade and she's a year older than me. So that means we actually got there at the same time at Oak Ridge Forest. That's kind of cool. Okay.
There you go. So we got there. Yep. So I went to an elementary school in the city. So did she, Merrill
Hmm.
Park
Oh,
Elementary
okay.
School. And then I went for a couple of months to South Middle School. And that's when my
Mm.
parents sold our house and we moved. Actually, when we first moved here, we lived in Pheasant Run.
Ah,
We lived in
okay. Right
Pheasant
across the
Run.
street. Right.
Yes. Yes. And I think it
Wow.
was, if that was seventh grade, it was, I believe, maybe ninth grade,
Hmm.
10th grade, we moved to Oak Ridge Forest.
About the Oak Ridge Forest. Wow.
I think
So
it was 10th grade.
when this is a good question too. The Sandhills, if anyone's familiar, like with our neighborhood, it's like I don't know how many blocks back. It's not close, but it's not far away. Um, when I was growing up, it was like never go into the Sandhills. It was like this super stigma on it, and like me and my friends, we went everywhere. We didn't go to the Sandhills like ever because there was like this stigma. We knew one kid that lived in there,
Yeah.
but there was always this stigma about it. Can you uh unveil that? Because I have no knowledge of like what's going on. I just drove through there one time because they were like selling houses for $1. So my mom drove through there one time, but it just looked like
Yeah.
sparse. It had a lot of like empty lots and stuff like that, but it didn't look like Flint or something like that for me growing up. So
So it's definitely, unfortunately, what one would probably call the ghetto of Saginaw Township, right?
is it still like that? Do you
Um,
know?
yes. So it is
Mm,
the lowest on the economic scale of neighborhoods in the township.
mm-hmm.
Um, Fun fact, I worked for Saginaw Township local government for 22 years.
Yes.
The last 10 and a half years, I worked in code enforcement, property maintenance.
Okay.
And I was given the South District of the township, which was the south side of State Street all the way south. So I got the neighborhoods I grew up in.
Mm,
And um, since my father grew up there, the name Sazumbo is very well known in the Sandhill. The Sandhill is generational. It's families for generations have lived there. So
cool.
everybody pretty much knows everybody. It's their own little world in the
That's
Sandhill.
what it felt like.
Yes. And even weirder is that this is the only neighborhood in the township where the city line goes right through the middle of the township, right through the middle of
Yeah.
the
Of the
neighborhood,
neighborhood, right? Because it's right
right in
on
the
the
middle of the
border.
neighborhood.
Because we're actually
Yep,
on
it
that
is.
like weird. I call it the armpit of the township because like a step to the left, right, or step for forward, you're gonna be in a new place. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So there definitely has been higher crime probably there, just as any neighborhood with poverty stricken um,
High poverty.
properties. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah, it's just higher crime rates.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it never felt like that. Like, I mean, I can
Mm,
see from the outside for people thinking, don't go there. It looks dangerous. It does, I hear about things. And I mean, even in my time working down there was a murder, there was a rape.
mm-hmm.
Um, there was just a murder there. Yeah, just a few years ago. We had two hostage situations there within the last few years.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's the only neighborhood in the township. When I did my job, I would get out of my vehicle and walk it and talk to the residents. They were the friendliest neighborhood to me,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
friendliest neighborhood to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is, there used to be a store there. It was called
Mm.
Sheldon's. It was right on
Sheldon's.
the corner of Vincent and Green Street.
Okay, so that's in the neighborhood, not over. What was that? That's Michigan on the other side.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
so it's not
Michigan
on
right
that
out there.
side. So it's in the neighborhood,
Nope,
right? Mm-hmm.
it's in the neighborhood. Um, I can't remember the man's name. I want to say Dale Sheldon, but might not be. He started
Actually,
it like,
Sheldon's. I actually heard of that family name. Actually, right? Mm-hmm.
yeah, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, it was very, everybody knew Sheldon's. Everybody knew
Mm-hmm.
the store Sheldon's.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, just just last Friday, I had went to a fish fry at a post, one of the American Legion posts in the city,
Mm-hmm.
and Joel Sheldon, one of the ancestors of the Sheldon family, who I've known for years, I'm good friends with. He grew up with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting there, and we were talking about some old stories from when he grew up with my dad, and
Mm-hmm.
we FaceTime my dad, and I'm talking to a friend of mine, and I said, you know, how cool that all these years later, like they're still talking about stories from when they grew up,
And here we are
and you
now.
know, here we are now, right? um but it it's an interesting neighborhood. It's very interesting. Code enforcement is created for neighborhoods like that. You
Mm,
know, for them, for people to take pride in their properties and stuff. And it's
mm-hmm.
hard. It can be hard when you're in poverty and you don't have a lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard for people to get to that place in their life to
Mm.
want to be proud of what they got. But there's quite a few people down there that absolutely take pride in their property.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great. Their properties
I would
look great.
imagine they build more houses since then because of that time when you could buy the property so cheap. I don't know how old I was. It was probably right around early high school, right around my freshman year. So maybe there's a few more houses there because, the Mays family lived like 2 blocks away from the Sandhills, and they might have been the ones who warned me. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But when I ride my bike there, that neighborhood looks so redundant that you actually can miss the house very easily. And I remember like suddenly it started to clear out. There was less houses. I was like, oh, I think I rode my bike too far. And then I got nervous. It's like, this is the Sand Hills. This is like what they call the Sand Hills. And like I got nervous and I turned around. But I feel like maybe if you rode your bike that, those, I believe Vincent Street was one of the first ones, right? You're right.
It's the
And
main
so when you
street.
ride
Yep.
your bike now, maybe there is a few more houses there compared to what it was when I was riding through.
No,
Wow, no.
unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So what you probably saw was the reason for the Sandhill name is that there was some foundries down there back in the day.
That's why they had that
And
empty lots. Okay.
yes,
Awesome.
so there's a couple of huge, it looks like huge empty lots, but in
Mm-hmm.
actuality, they're separated lots in there. They're just
Yeah.
individual or
Yeah.
invisible lines. You can't see the property lines.
Yeah.
Um, but there was foundries down there. There was a
So
school
cool.
down there at one point. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was, I'm telling you, it was its own little world. It was great.
Yeah.
They used to have like summer picnics. They used to have winter, like a winter festival, almost like, I would say festival. I'm not sure if you
Mm-hmm.
want to call it that, but they would have on these vacant lots, those
Mm-hmm.
two huge vacant lots that we see, they would have a huge bonfire and somebody would get a trailer and hitch it to a truck or something, put hay in it and give
That
people
is
hay rides,
awesome.
driving around the neighborhood. They'd have hot cocoa, they'd have Santa show up. I mean, back in the day, they took a lot of pride in
That's awesome.
their people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they really
Mm-hmm.
did.